Hello and welcome to Movies and Tea After Hours. I'm your host always, Edward Jones, and joining me of course is my co-host, Miss Kim Lowe. Tonight we continue our After Hour specials, as it's Kim's turn to pick, as we look at City of Ember, a young adult adaptation, which is rather fitting because it ties in very nicely with Mortal Engines, which we covered last time, both in terms of source material as well as plotting, as City of Ember sees humanity living underground after a post-apocalyptic event. Now 200 years later, a mystery briefcase could provide the hope and salvation that the city severely needs, as the generators failing and threatening to plunge the whole city into eternal darkness. Kim, this is obviously your choice for this episode. As we said, it ties in rather nicely because the last one we did Mortal Engines, which is obviously post-apocalyptic world and cities are now mobile, and now here we have post-apocalyptic event and now cities are all underground. So what was it about City of Ember that made you want to bring it to the show? I can see that now. It was definitely a cozy movie, to say the least, because obviously at the moment we're now in autumn as we record this, and
I just
outside
really love
it's
I know that it's like a young adult. It's kind of more of like a kids movie. But I just really
shame while we're here.
I've always really liked
this movie.
I think just like the adventure.
I don't know why
you
didn't want to share that there, but that's Kim's preference. But
I mean, the young Saoirse Ronan
but no,
is
I see now that obviously
you
mentioned
obviously
with
I watch anything with her in it right
it is
now,
very much a fan of that same sort of world.
I really like the whole
kind
setting.
of a slum,
I think it's what caught me the first time is the gamer in me that when it first panned into this overhead look of the city, like it was exactly like Final Fantasy VII.
At the heart of it, you've got this briefcase that has been passed from mayor to mayor,
seeing that, and I was just like, oh my god, it reminded me of 200 years.
However, along the process and around the time of the 8th
so
mayor,
much, and I just
the
really
briefcase got lost, or more precisely, got stuffed in a closet, the same way we do with all things that are valuable. We tuck them away in a closet with all intention to return to them, and then just completely forget about them. And the same can be said for this briefcase, which, as they're showing this briefcase being passed across, I have to say it's getting real dinged up and dented and scratched and stuff, and it's all like, and these people aren't moving. What are they doing with this briefcase? I mean, surely something so important you would have a little pedestal or something to put it on, like lock it in a vault or something.
Yeah, but I think the thing is that it almost feels like mayor to mayor, they know what's going on, like themselves, but it's so that, but then no one else knows other than the mayor. It's like the secret that the city is not supposed to know because they don't want them to be frantic. They don't want them to think about the outside world because all the rules are to protect them, to be in this space for 200 years, and everything, the builders, the engineers, and everything are set to be in this world. And I think that it's that type of world building that I really like about here is is when you're thinking about your life being like, obviously our life is generated by electricity,
on, just how
everything,
computers,
everything is generated by it, but we still have the outside world. But here it's just a world which is underground. You have strings of lights everywhere. Everything is powered in a very, everyone's trying to power in their own way, just like they're doing the little pedal to generate the sounds and the electricity for that, and all those little things. I really think it's
going to need, or perhaps it was just thrown together.
I think it's
quickly.
just really unique,
so
the world itself, because obviously in a world like that, you know that
in particular,
as the world falls apart and as they're trying to create this place, trying to like
the start of the story,
like keep it going with food and everything.
Students of Ember
You start
City
seeing
School,
that as they move around, that a
assigned
lot of
their
it
roles
is being
that
hidden,
they're
how much food is
undertake in the
left,
city,
or
and it's all
how
assigned by
sustainable
lottery and
everything
handed out
is,
by Mirko, played by Bill Murray,
and you know, like
doing
the deeper
a little bit
obviously.
of dramatic role here. It's less comedic, more dramatic, I thought. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I mean, they got Matt. Yeah, I mean, you also got Toby Jones, you got Matt and Lando. So, depending on like what sort of where your movie tastes lie, then you'll probably get a bit more excited. I mean, they even got Mary Jean Baptiste, who plays the gardener Clary, which I was excited to see, and it's kind of funny.
I mean, I didn't find it
as
funny as you watch it a few more times, but I think the
done
first time I watched it, I thought it was
doing American accents,
it was pretty fitting for him, I guess.
That brethren of British actors who went over to America and did like more convincing American accents.
And I think it's always surprising when you watch movies like this, and you're like, and you don't feel like there's like a huge budget behind it.
You see Idris
and then you're like,
as,
but they got Bill Murray, and then they got Tim Robbins, and then you know,
so,
like you have some familiar faces here and there, and then you start seeing all, and you're just kind of like, well, but, you know, that's kind of neat that they were able to get
the initial sort of step of this world. I mean, the idea that to power your roles, you don't choose your own. Like, but it could be, but I mean, it could be because you know Tom Hanks is a producer and he could pull some strings. With our two leads here, so we got Loris, who's obviously played by Cerise Ronan, who would later go on to play Hannah and Ladybird and being Little Women. So I think later in the life she's sort of like really sort of stepped out, but sort of at this point she's really early into her career. Well, yeah, I mean, she was in Grand Budapest Hotel along with Bill Murray as well, because obviously Bill Murray has to be in every Wes Anderson movie ever made, because that's the law. And yeah, I mean, so we've obviously got Linda, who's and Dune. Pair swap roles because Dune wants to be
is really early. I think it's probably around the same time that she did that movie.
And he's also the son of an inventor repairman Loris, who's played by.
I forgot the name of it. But,
sorry, his dad's played by Tim Robbins.
It was I Can Never Be Your Woman.
I don't know.
And
it was kind of an understated role for.
I think that was one of her first roles, and it was like a child. It was like a child role. But then I think as she goes further down into her career, she really picks things that are. I think she's done a really big variety of roles, from like killers to to vampires to dramas to quirky Wes Anderson films and
yeah. Definitely so, and I love the whole pipework setup, where you plug into different outlets so you can power the light on the helmet light, and just the way those pipes work. I mean, it's all the behind the scenes stuff, where it's all like the big gears and things like that, which I just really loved, and I think it appeals to, because my grandfather was an industrial engineer, so he basically built those big sort of piston engines and things.
But I mean, these films are always like that, right? I think it had to do with the fact that he didn't want his son to follow his path because of what happened to
whenever
Nina's
I see stuff
parents.
like this, it's always got like a sense of fascination.
I think it all kind of ties together in a really abstract type of way.
When you see it on screen, it's got such a visual presence.
I think it's just that
the problem is that when you go back into the city,
when you watch the two of them,
it feels too much
their
like
fates are kind of set when the moment that they swap their roles, right?
It's kind of like, what traditional sort of medieval style sets basically are set with like a few modern twists here and there. And it's kind of a shame, because the whole time I'm watching this film, I'm just waiting for them to like leave the city, and the adventure to be them leaving the city. But the whole film instead is about them building up to them leaving the city. There's nothing actually outside, and I think that's where my disappointment lies, is that I'm waiting for the events to get started when the end of the film is them escaping the city is the adventure, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, like, if it was a TV series, then obviously it would have been that way. But, because this was, coincidentally a match to our Mortal Engines, was also a box office bomb, it didn't get to continue its film for the franchise. And I would say, like, if in the next film, they would have had it set up really well. Like, I don't have a problem with it. I think that the adventure of this was going against the authority, aka the mayor, to use this to find a way to go out. And the whole part about exiting was one of my favorite sequences. Sure, like, now you look back at it and you're like, I watched it very close to release and that sort of time, like early 2010s. And like you can, back then it was okay, but when you come back to it now, you kind of realize, like, when you go back, you kind of see that there is this, the CGI is very dated. You can really see that whole, like, boat sequence where I thought it was amazing when I first saw it. Like, when I first watched this, I thought it was so fun. And I was just thinking, if this was in 3D, this would be incredible to watch. Like, it would be like you're on a roller coaster, right? You're in those, like, water rides in an amusement park. And
I'm pretty desperate not to be subjected to another national day of singing.
The whole, like,
this is the big event for these people.
Where they
it's
had
the
to
day
set
of singing,
this whole thing
which
in motion, and how the builders had set this whole intricate
by the mayor as a way to
thing where
distract
the
everyone,
lockers,
so we can
would turn into boats, and it would just get there, and then you'd have to do this whole setting where you'd have to climb up this long ladder and I was just like, the only flaw I see here is, if people were running the generator, who hasn't seen that long ladder in the back that goes up to the tower and thought to turn it on? I mean, if there was one flaw, that would be the only thing, in terms of story and correlation. Like, this thing has been going on for 200 years, and no one's thought about, going up that ladder, because everybody follows the rules. Until you have 200 years later, these two kids who are so desperate to fix their city, to find a way out, that, they'll do anything.
She's a mute. That's why. All she does is eat paper. That's her big contribution. I was just like, why are you here? I do not need another. I don't need another drain.
But I think it's really nice because the story itself. Another thing I really like about it is that usually when we have these sort of things, we have the two main characters,
but as I said,
she always includes like little Poppy, and Poppy is such a fun character because. Poppy is so cute because I really like her because she, like you have kids that are on sets and they're just a drag, and I really like that. When they're running down the street to go to the generator or whatever, the pipe works or whatever.
The grandmother
she doesn't even need to hold her hand; she's just running next to them really quickly.
The lights going off sends it into such a kerfuffle that she throws all the wool all over the room.
The whole way that she was going, and she wasn't like crying, and she wasn't like all these type of whining things.
So, like,
she was
the
just
lights
like
have
a
been off for
quiet
about
little
2
girl
seconds.
instead of standing around.
It's still not in dramatic terms yet. The mystery, I mean, the setup was good. And I was like, when we had the initial sort of setup where you've got the scientists and they're putting the case together, and I was like, oh well, this is really coming really good. And then it kind of ends.
But that's because we're standing on different spectrums, right? It's because you're a dad, you have kids who drain you every day. But I don't have that problem. I actually really enjoy. I thought it was such a nice type of addition because it wasn't harmful to the set.
Taking place in the back room, so
obviously her eating the paper wasn't great. But what film doesn't have some hurdles, right?
And then we have like the most spindly ass boat that this trio escape on. It's sort of like it's essentially like they're sitting in a hollowed out grandfather clock. It's not like anything that looks like it would actually float. And it's, as I said, that was the only thing that distracted me about this whole escape plan, much like the fact that by the time we leave them on the surface, spoiler alert, and you're thinking, well, these are 3 kids that have just come from underground. They've got no training or no idea how to find anything, so they're basically screwed. Now, and their hope rests on dropping a rock on the city to let people know that it worked. And obviously, this all gets picked up in the next book, and they meet a human civilization up on the surface, but we never got to see that because this being another young adult franchise that never was. And we said before Mortal Engines that there's a whole bunch of these, like the Dark Rising, his Mortal Instruments, I want to say, Ties Dark Materials, which is obviously Northern Lights, that failed. Artemis Fowl failed, and that was a Disney Plus exclusive. So it's just because something's like a big book series doesn't mean that it's actually going to make it a big film franchise, which I think was always the hope that whenever one of these came out. I mean, obviously I understand why Dark Rising failed because it looked cheap as all hell. But, for whatever reason, this just didn't strike a chord with audiences. It took only 15 million. It took 17.9 million against a budget of 55 million. So, not even close.
His Dark Materials.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, to me, to be fair, I mean, when we talk about Mortal Engines like last time or City of Ember, these 2 books I really didn't really know about until the movies came out. So, and City of Ember, I remembered I picked up fairly cheap It was like in the bargain bin when I picked it up. And the only reason why I picked it up was because it was in the bargain bin. And then sometimes you find some gems. And then this was one of them for me, obviously. It was a gem because I had a lot of fun with it. And it's always kind of like a go-to movie when I kind of want some adventure. I mean, I understand where you're coming from about all of this, and even like watching it this time for the recording, I mean, I definitely noticed some of these things a little bit more because, I'm a more seasoned movie viewer now, but, or at least I like to think that, but I still was really engrossed in the movie. I thought it was really fun. I was super into it.
And I think it's one that
it has this like very,
I don't know.
I guess what you call it, comfort,
feel
good. Really I don't know. I really enjoyed it. Like the whole dynamic of Lena's character, Loon's character. I think they contrasted really well. And then you have the rest of the cast. Maybe the adult cast was kind of really
set in the surface world, like, and you've got they
weren't used as much as they could be. The surface dwelling
tribe,
but at the same time, I think
Ember City
what they
tribe,
tried to
and it's
achieve
sort of like
was
this,
done. I mean, obviously, I think what failed the box office was just the film didn't.
A little too dry for the kids, but
probably didn't have the popularity that it needed. Like for maybe the franchise wasn't as popular. The book franchise itself wasn't as popular, and I don't know. I mean, I think that's one of the main reasons. Because honestly, I never even heard of City of Ember like before I saw it in the store shelf. So.
Yeah.
But you see, that's the thing is, I think that City of Ember, like for me, what differs from you is that I actually thought that the inside setting was really good. I wasn't like, sure, I want them to go out, but I think that ending it on this part was not a bad thing, because a lot of movies have that sort of thing, or TV series, where you have that long that kind of moment where it's like some post-apocalyptic world, like the 100, for example. They were living on ships.
There's
and then
also
they finally
to mix
tossed
things
these
up,
100
we also
kids
get a giant mole.
They tossed these 100 kids onto the ground. That was, post-nuclear war or whatever. And then you have to see other little things.
Explained.
And a lot of those plots go very similarly. You see civilization that's there. You have some type of power struggle. And basically it starts being very, like, all about the characters themselves and how they build up from there. So I don't know if the second, if they went on, it would have been any success. Or any more successful than this one, or less successful than this one. But
yeah, it's
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. I like City of Ember because of the setting itself. I mean, I've never
film where someone gets eaten by a mole.
I keep wanting to read the books, like the whole book series, but I haven't gotten around to it yet.
I mean, the film. We haven't even talked about who directs this film, because this is where it's kind of interesting, because the film's directed by Gil Keenan, who his first film was Monster House.
Oh, that's something we didn't mention.
Which was like a really fun.
Because I really like, you know what I really like is that years after this,
it came
out, we don't know what happened
on
the surface.
But it's a really great.
Like they keep it really vague. We just know that there's some post-apocalyptic event that happened.
Now, and this was sort of like
and now we see these insects which are overgrown, pretty much.
So this was going to be like his big sort
they're
of
showing up
breakout
everywhere.
hit,
Like I thought the moth
followed
was
up
cute
with the adaptation of
seriously.
Poltergeist, which again I think even
moth
less
was so
people
cute.
saw. So unfortunately, he's had a bit of a
And then you have,
diminishing
like,
returns
the
of people
moles
going
and
to see his
stuff,
movies.
That being your biggest
seem
threat
to be
is
going down.
kind of
But
funny.
no, as I said, those three movies I've yet to watch the remake of Poltergeist, but I have to say this is a real departure from Monster House. I was really hoping when I found out he did Monster House that it would be similar sort of vein tonally, but it's not. Instead, it's much more. And I've seen people like bounce around that it's like Brazil for beginners, but I think they don't really touch upon it. It's just kind of taps into that sort of like the same words like Hunger Games and stuff, where the children are really sort of switched on. The adults are kind of just so beaten down by the system, they're just conforming. So it falls down to the kids to basically get humanity to where it needs to be. But it's interesting he cites David Lynch, Richard Elfman, and Alfred Hitchcock as his director influences. Oh, definitely so. It's got some real dark moments in there. Yeah, Heather Baxendale over at Man I Love Film podcast put it as one of her 31 Halloween treats. So, because she's been, whereas we were obviously doing the Hooptober this year, she was doing 31 Halloween treats where she was highlighting her favourite spooky things, and Monster House was on that list. And then we all got very excited.
I mean, you could definitely feel a little bit of that because, I mean, Monster House was on the edge of being more kind of creepy and fun.
Get more people to watch. Well, that obviously brings us to the end of...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Monster House is, I totally agree with you. I actually think it's a really underrated animated film. I've actually thought about it, tossing it in for After Hours at one point.
You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and say hi to us. And wherever you happen to listen to us, please do hit the like and subscribe button.
Because it is a really fun
type of
the
profile
movie,
of the show.
Especially if you watch it during.
But as an After Hours season draws to a close, it
means
means a new season must begin. And Kim, what are we going to be looking at for our next season? Yep, that's right. We're going to be going through the history of the creature features over the course of 8 picks, and that is going to be making up our 8th season here of Movies and Tea. So hopefully you join us again once more in the booth as we kick off a season of creature feature goodness. And let's face it, you all expected it after the amount of shark movies we covered on this movies. We had to branch out at some point, so we're going to be doing that by giving you a whole season of creature feature goodness. But that's all coming up on our next episode. We kick that off. But until then, thank you to my co-host Kim. Thank you to you lot for listening, and we'll be back very soon with a new season and a new theme. So, until then, good night.
Okay, so for season 8, we're being kind of going back into our themes, and we're going to be doing a creature feature season.